Shalom, welcome to Light to the Nations, and Chag Sameach, happy holiday. Baruch Hashem, with thanks to God, we are coming to the season of Pesach, Passover, which is really such a definitive time for the Jewish people and the whole world. Everybody knows that Passover is the celebration of freedom, not only for Israel, but for the whole world. And what really is that redemption all about? We know that it's about escaping from all that which is holding us back and keeping us in prison, even in the prison of our own minds, all our preconceived notions and all of the different things that we worship that are false. Passover is really about coming clean in so many ways. And it's a beloved time for everybody. We have families that get together and celebrate the Seder. It's a time of togetherness. But in our time, the main aspect of Passover, which is the Passover offering, is missing. And as we are now also beginning the book of Leviticus in our Torah reading schedule, this is a really good opportunity for us to reflect on the whole concept of offerings in the Torah. You know, Passover is such a beloved time, and it's such a joyous time. But when we examine the Torah, we examine certain incidents also in Jewish history, we begin to understand that the main aspect of the tremendous joy that is experienced by the Jewish people on Passover revolves around the bringing of the Passover offering. And so what really needs to be understood is what about bringing the Korban Pesach that we are taught about in Exodus 12 is an experience of such profound joy. And in so doing, really, in understanding the concept of the Korban Pesach, we also need to understand more the concept of all of the offerings, all of the korbanot, the sacrifices in the Holy Temple. Again, this is the central theme of Passover, and of course, the central theme of the book of Vayikra, the very center of the Torah, and everything that goes on in the Holy Temple is really all about the bringing of the offerings. So this is really an important opportunity for us to understand maybe how we ourselves feel about the concept of the offerings. And I want to go further also and state to you that I think the concept of how we relate to this part of the Torah is almost like an acid test in our relationship with Hashem, in our relationship with Torah itself, with our destiny, and maybe with all our priorities, whether we are Jews or Gentiles, our priorities regarding really our take on creation, maybe even on who we are as people, on the role of man in the world. There's no subject, I think, from my experience, in the entire area of Torah that has become so controversial, as it were, or that evokes such tremendous responses of extreme kind of reactions than the concept of the offerings in the Holy Temple. Everybody loves Passover. Hey, gefilte fish, the old Maxwell House Haggadah. I don't know if they have that anymore, but when I was growing up, and you got your gefilte fish with horseradish, and of course you have 4 cups of wine and the Seder plate, and the children ask the Manishtana, and it's all very, very picturesque and beautiful. But, it's not the point. And you'd be surprised when you try to explain to people, there's something very, very wrong with our Passover experience. There are only two ideas in the whole Torah, 2 mitzvot, about which is associated the spiritual punishment of excision, of karetz, for non-compliance. And they are the Brit Milah, the circumcision, and the Passover offering. If a Jewish male does not do the Brit Milah, the circumcision, if a Jewish male does not bring the Passover offering, the punishment is very severe. It's a spiritual concept, this idea of karetz, of the excision of the soul. And you'll never find, actually, unfortunately, do find some people who think that they shouldn't have the Brit Milah. But most religious Jews that are plugged into the Torah realize that we really have to have the Korban Pesach. We have to bring the Passover offering. It's an eternal commandment, God tells us. It's something very, very important. But what could we do? We're not able to do it right now. There are circumstances beyond our control, and it's not It's not something that's possible in the political climate, perhaps. However they explain it, the idea is Passover offering is by most people considered to be something which is like not going to happen. Neverland almost. They think that one day something is going to change on some metaphysical level, just like a lot of people consider regarding the building of the temple itself. Some circumstances will change that will allow us to bring the Passover offering. And until then, what could we do? There's nothing that we can do about it. And this is not the reality. And this take on the situation is really, unfortunately, the result of our diaspora experience that has totally changed our way of looking at things. So this year, for example, once again, the Temple Institute is in the news and is at the forefront of a group that is bringing an appeal to the Supreme Court of Israel regarding the right of the Jewish people to exercise their religious freedom and bring the Passover sacrifice on the 14th of Nisan, as is required by the Torah. Again, an opportunity to put Israeli democracy to the test, because the government of Israel guarantees freedom of religious worship to all its people. And the concept of the Passover offering is a pivotal point, so central, and it is so definitive in the very identity of who the Jewish people are, that if we have the opportunity to perform it, and of course it can only be done on the Temple Mount, then certainly we have to exhaust every possibility to make sure that we have indeed tried to perform it. But what are the reaction of people when they hear this? How could we be bringing the Passover offering today? All sorts of things are said, and it's those things that I want to talk about today. Because a lot of people are confused. A lot of people have a lot of ambivalent feelings about the offerings today. And there are those of us who feel uncomfortable. There are those of us who just don't understand the role of the offerings in the Torah itself. So with the confluence of the reading of the book of Vayikra, as well as the arrival of Passover, and especially this Shabbat, which is called Shabbat Hagadol, the Great Sabbath. And we'll see soon why it's called the Great Sabbath and what miracle it commemorates. This confluence of all of these things, all of these issues at this time, presents a great opportunity for us to really understand one of the most important areas of Torah, of our faith, and of the divine commandments. You know, the whole concept of the offerings really is, I think, one of the best examples of how, when Israel stood at Mount Sinai, we learned that they said, and it's mentioned in the Torah, in the book of Exodus, Israel's response at Mount Sinai to God's offer of the yoke of the commandments was, Na'aseh v'nishma. We will do and we will obey. And we defined that expression as meaning, and we also talked about how it's a great secret. It's a device that the angels, the ministering angels themselves, use in their service before the Almighty. The concept of negating one's own personal will and saying, you know what, I don't necessarily understand everything now. I don't necessarily comprehend with my intellect what God requires of me, why God requires of it, but I know that I must do it. And this is the secret of Israel's collective response, coming from the deepest place in the collective soul of Israel. Na'aseh, we will do first, v'nishma, and we will hear, or translated as we will obey, we will understand, meaning we take it upon ourselves constantly in this life to do the will of God, even if we don't understand. I think that really sums up the concept of the offerings in the Holy Temple, or more specifically, you know, there's a very ancient prayer, and it's a very simple prayer that really sums up the whole idea, where we say, you know, Hashem, may it be your will that your will becomes my will. In other words, that I cease to follow after, to seek after, to be drawn after my own personal ritzonot, my own personal will, my desire for self-gratification based in my own vanity or needs, but rather that I understand that I really should be concerned with your will. I think that's really the crux of the issue when it comes to the offerings. And why do I say